He was a young billionaire, tall, handsome, and every woman's dream. His words were smooth, his smile could melt hearts, and he was set to marry the love of his life. But just when everything seemed perfect, tragedy struck. A terrible car accident left him fighting for his life, and tied to a wheelchair. Their love, once so strong, began to crack under the weight of pain and fear. Will their love survive this storm? Stay tuned to find out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Miss Lucy sat alone in the hospital waiting room, her hands tightly holding her brown leather bag. Her heart was beating fast, like it wanted to jump out of her chest. The white walls around her felt too bright, too cold. The smell of medicines, blood, and fear filled the air. Every tick of the clock sounded louder and louder, like a drum beating in her head. She looked at the door again and again, praying for it to open. God, please let Paul be okay, she whispered under her breath, tears gathering in her eyes. Finally, after what felt like forever, the door opened. A doctor with gray hair, round glasses, and a tired but kind face stepped out. His white coat moved as he walked toward her. Miss Lucy, he called gently. Yes, doctor. Lucy quickly jumped to her feet, almost dropping her bag. The doctor looked at her kindly and asked, And who is Mr. Paul to you? Lucy's voice shook as she replied, He's my fiancé, doctor. We are planning to get married in 6 months. The doctor nodded slowly, adjusting his glasses. He took a deep breath before speaking again. Miss Lucy, please sit down, he said softly. Fear wrapped around Lucy like a heavy blanket, but she sat down, clutching her bag even tighter. I have something important to tell you, the doctor said. Since you are the one closest to him, you should hear it first. Lucy's stomach turned. Her fingers were shaking. What is it, doctor? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The doctor gave a small sad smile. I have both good news and bad news, he said. Lucy's heart dropped. The good news, the doctor began, is that even though the accident was very terrible, Paul survived. He is strong. We managed to stop the bleeding. Right now, he is stable. In fact, he can be discharged soon. Thank you for acting so fast by bringing him here. Lucy felt a big breath escape her lips. Thank you, God, she thought. She placed her hand on her chest and whispered, Thank you, doctor. The doctor's face, however, became more serious. He took a step closer to Lucy. But, he said carefully, the accident damaged his spinal cord badly. Lucy blinked, confused. Spinal cord, she repeated. Yes, Miss Lucy, the doctor said slowly. I am very sorry to say this, but he may not be able to walk again. The words hit Lucy like a heavy stone. Her whole body became cold. No, doctor, she cried. There must be something else you can do. Please, we are getting married. Paul cannot be in a wheelchair. He cannot. Tears started pouring down her face. People in the waiting room began turning to look at her, but she didn't care. The doctor sighed deeply. We have tried everything, he said. The damage was severe. His spinal cord is completely affected. We advise you to get him a wheelchair to help him move. But don't lose hope. Sometimes small miracles happen. 6 months is still a long time. Lucy shook her head, covering her mouth to stop herself from screaming. She wished she could wake up from this bad dream. I am sorry, Miss Lucy, the doctor said, patting her back gently. He will be discharged tomorrow morning. Please take good care of him. He will need all the love he can get. Lucy nodded weakly, wiping her tears with her sleeve. As the doctor left, Lucy sat there for a long time, staring at the floor. Her dreams of walking down the church aisle, dancing with Paul, starting a family, all of it seemed to crash around her like broken glass. Is love enough to survive this? She wondered painfully. Lucy walked slowly to Paul's hospital room. Her legs felt heavy, her heart even heavier. She paused at the door, wiping her face and forcing a small smile. Be strong, Lucy. For Paul. She pushed the door open quietly. Paul was lying on the hospital bed, sleeping peacefully. His face looked pale but calm. Machines beeped softly around him. There was a small bandage on his forehead, and his arm was in a cast. Lucy walked quietly to his bedside and sat down. She took his hand gently into hers. His skin was warm. Tears filled her eyes again as she remembered the doctor's words. Suddenly, Paul's fingers moved. His eyes opened slowly. When he saw Lucy, his face brightened, but quickly sadness covered it. "Lucy," he whispered, his voice dry and weak. "I'm so sorry." Tears rolled down his cheeks. He tried to sit up, but winced in pain. "Shoo, don't move," Lucy said softly, helping him relax back on the pillow. She wiped his tears with her hand. "Lucy," Paul whispered again. "I heard the nurses talking. I can't walk again, right?" Lucy swallowed hard. She looked into his tearful eyes and forced a smile. "We will go through this together, my love," she said firmly, holding his hand tighter. "I'm not going anywhere." Paul broke down, crying openly now. "I don't deserve you, Lucy. You deserve someone better, someone who can dance with you at your wedding, someone who can run around and make you laugh." Lucy shook her head, tears falling freely now. "I didn't choose you because of your legs, Paul," she said. "I chose you because you are my heart." Paul closed his eyes and wept like a child. Lucy rested her forehead against his and whispered, "We will walk this road together, even if you can't walk." At that moment, in that cold hospital room, a stronger kind of love was born. A love not built on easy days, but on standing together through the hardest storms. But little did Lucy know, the real trials of their love were only just beginning. The sun was just rising when the doctor signed the discharge papers. Lucy helped Paul into the wheelchair, her heart heavy as she pushed him towards the hospital gate. Paul held her hand tightly, his eyes filled with silent pain. "Thank you for staying, Lucy," he said quietly. Lucy forced a smile and nodded, but inside her heart, there was a storm. She didn't know if she was strong enough for the life waiting for them. When they got home, everything felt different. The house that once buzzed with laughter now felt cold and quiet. Lucy guided Paul carefully into the sitting room and helped him onto a soft chair. She removed his shoes, placed a blanket over his legs, and smiled weakly. "Are you okay, my love?" she asked. Paul nodded slowly. "I am, as long as you're by my side." Lucy swallowed the lump in her throat. She didn't answer. She simply went into the kitchen and started preparing food. In the days that followed, Lucy became Paul's hands and feet. She bathed him, dressed him, fed him, and even helped him in the toilet. It was hard. Sometimes Paul would apologize over and over. Sometimes Lucy would hide in the bathroom just to cry where he wouldn't see her. One afternoon, after lunch, Paul took Lucy's hand and smiled sadly. "My angel," he said, "I want to thank you for all your help. You don't know what it means to me. You're my blessing." Tears filled Lucy's eyes. She squeezed his hand. "You don't have to thank me," she whispered. Paul looked deeply into her eyes. "I still want to marry you, Lucy," he said, his voice trembling. "Even if I can't walk beside you, even if I have to be pushed down the aisle, I still want to be your husband." Lucy smiled, but inside she was screaming. She nodded slowly. "Of course, my love." Later that night, when Paul had fallen asleep in his wheelchair, Lucy sat alone in the sitting room. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Tick, tick, tick. Her mind was noisy with thoughts. Is this really my life now? Changing diapers, pushing wheelchairs, cleaning up after him, no fun, no freedom? I'm too young for this. I wanted a husband, not a child to care for. Tears ran down her face. If I run now, before the wedding, maybe it's better. Better than being trapped forever in a life full of pain and sacrifice. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the bathroom. "Lucy!" Paul's voice cried out, full of fear. Lucy ran as fast as she could. There on the cold tiles, Paul lay helplessly, his wheelchair tipped over. "My God," she gasped. "Paul, are you okay?" He looked up at her, tears in his eyes. I tried to do it myself. I didn't want to disturb you. I thought I could manage." Lucy bent down, her hands shaking as she lifted him with all her strength back into the wheelchair. Paul winced in pain but said nothing. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry," he kept repeating. Lucy's heart broke more with each word. That night, as they sat in silence, Lucy spoke softly. "Paul, I think we need to get someone to help around the house." Paul's face tightened. Am I already too much for you to handle? No, Lucy said quickly. No, my love. It's just, I'm exhausted. I barely have time to breathe. I love you, Paul, but I need help if I'm going to survive this too. Paul looked down, ashamed. After a long pause, he said, If it will make you happier, then find someone. I don't want to be the reason you're unhappy. Lucy hugged him tightly. I love you, Paul. Please don't ever forget that. The next day, Pamela arrived. She was a young woman with bright eyes, brown skin, and an energy that filled the house with life again. Lucy welcomed her warmly, showing her around and explaining what needed to be done. Pamela got to work immediately. She bathed Paul, fed him, cleaned the house, and even told jokes that made Paul smile again, something Lucy hadn't seen in weeks. At first, Lucy stayed around watching, but slowly, she began to drift away. She started going out again. First, just short trips to the supermarket, then long lunches with friends, then wild nights at parties and clubs. She laughed again. She danced. She posted happy pictures online. She looked free. Meanwhile, Paul sat quietly at home, staring at the door, waiting for the woman he loved to come home. Pamela would sit beside him and try to cheer him up. Don't worry, sir, she would say. Madam Lucy loves you. She just needs time. But deep down, Paul wondered, is she slipping away from me? One evening, Lucy came back late. She smelled of perfume and laughter. Paul waited for her in the sitting room. Lucy, he said quietly, can we talk? Lucy sighed loudly. Paul, I'm tired. Can it wait till morning? Paul looked at her with sad eyes. Please, just a few minutes. Lucy dropped her handbag and sat far from him. Paul swallowed hard. Do you still love me, Lucy? Lucy looked away, avoiding his eyes. Her heart was pounding. She wanted to scream yes, but the truth sat like a heavy stone in her chest. She said nothing. The silence between them was louder than any scream. One morning, after spending another long night out with her friends, Lucy stumbled into the house. She was tired but wearing a bright smile, the kind that only comes after a wild night of fun. As she entered the living room, she froze. Paul was sitting in his wheelchair, wide awake, and staring at her with a look that mixed confusion and concern. Honey, you're up so early, Lucy said, trying to sound cheerful, her voice a bit too bright. Paul sighed deeply, his eyes heavy with worry. I didn't see you at all yesterday. I was worried, Lucy. Worried? Please, I'm old enough to take care of myself. Lucy waved her hand dismissively, as if it were no big deal. I had the best time with the girls. We went out to party, and it was amazing. Paul's face fell, the sadness in his voice undeniable. Lucy, you know I need help here. You just left me, like I didn't matter. Lucy scoffed and rolled her eyes. No, I didn't leave you. Pamela is here. That's what she's for, right? To help you. But Lucy, you're about to marry me, Paul said, his voice soft and hurt. I thought you'd be here for me, especially now. We can't go on like this. Lucy's face turned red with anger, and her hands clenched into fists. So, because I'm marrying a man in a wheelchair, I'm supposed to stop living my life? You want me to sit at home and act like I'm your nurse forever? She shouted, her voice thick with frustration. No, Paul, I'm not doing that. I deserve more than this. Paul's heart shattered. He couldn't believe the words coming from her mouth. Lucy, this isn't the woman I fell in love with, he whispered, his voice breaking. Lucy let out a bitter laugh, her eyes cold. Love? Love for who? A man in a wheelchair? Oh, please, she mocked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Tears filled Paul's eyes, but before he could say another word, Lucy turned sharply and stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the empty house. The next morning, Paul called out, Lucy, are you awake? But there was no response. He called again, his voice filled with desperation. When there was still no answer, Paul wheeled himself out of the room and found Pamela cleaning in the kitchen. Pamela, he asked, his voice tight. Have you seen Lucy? Pamela stopped what she was doing, her expression heavy with sympathy. She's gone, sir, she said quietly. She left. She gave me this letter. Paul's hands trembled as he took the letter from Pamela. He opened it slowly, his heart racing in his chest. The words were sharp and cold. I'm sorry, Paul. I can't marry you anymore. I can't live like this. I'm leaving the country with my old boyfriend. I also took some money from your drawer. Think of it as payment for my time. Goodbye. The letter slipped from his hands, and tears started to roll down his face. His heart felt like it was being ripped apart. The woman he loved was gone. Pamela stepped forward, her face full of concern. I'm so sorry, sir. What happened? Why would she leave like this? Paul couldn't find the words. He just stared at the letter, his mind spinning. Help me to my room, Pamela, he finally said, his voice empty. I need to rest. As Pamela gently pushed him toward his room, Paul felt the weight of everything crashing down on him. He entered his room and collapsed onto the bed, the emptiness in his heart consuming him. He closed his eyes, and memories of happier times flooded his mind. The days when Lucy used to laugh with him, when they made plans for the future, plans that now felt like a distant dream. How did things go so wrong? He couldn't understand. The love he once thought was unbreakable was now a broken shell. He turned onto his side, the room spinning as he tried to come to terms with the reality of her absence. He had no idea where she was or what had changed in her. All he had left was the cold, empty letter and the quiet house that once felt like home. Why, Lucy? Why? He whispered to himself, the words carrying the weight of his heartbreak. Outside, the world continued, indifferent to his pain. For 2 days, Paul didn't leave his room. The silence was deafening. He refused food. He refused water. His only company was his own grief and the memories of Lucy. Each moment felt like an eternity. Every corner of his room reminded him of what he had lost, of what he thought he had. He stared at the wall, unable to move, unable to speak. The pain in his chest seemed to be crushing him. Pamela knocked softly on his door, her voice filled with concern. Paul, are you okay? But there was no response. She knocked again, louder this time. Paul, please answer me. Still nothing. She stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. She had seen the depths of Paul's sorrow after Lucy left. But this was something else. She was scared. Scared for him. Scared for herself. She didn't want to lose him, not like this. On the 3rd day, Pamela couldn't wait any longer. She had to go in. With a deep breath, she turned the doorknob and walked into the dark room. The air was thick with sadness. Paul sat in the corner, unmoving, his face gaunt and pale. His eyes were empty, staring at nothing. Pamela's heart broke at the sight. She couldn't just stand there. She walked over to him, kneeling beside him gently. Paul, she whispered, you have to fight. I know you're hurting, but you can't just give up. There was no answer. He didn't even look at her. Pamela swallowed hard, gathering all the strength she could find. She began to clean the room, quietly picking up the crumpled papers and dishes that had been left forgotten. She turned on the lights and opened the windows to let the fresh air in. Let me help you, she said softly. She knelt beside him, took his hand, and gently lifted him up. She led him to the bathroom and helped him get cleaned up, speaking softly to him the whole time. She didn't ask questions. She just showed him the care he desperately needed. After the bath, she sat him down and fed him, spooning the food into his mouth carefully. Her eyes were filled with kindness, her voice soothing. You're not alone, Paul. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Slowly, Paul's body started to respond. His breathing became steadier. His eyes lost the faraway look. He still didn't say anything, but at least he was with her again. Days passed. Pamela stayed by his side, always there with a smile, with encouragement, with patience. It wasn't easy, but they found little moments of joy. She made him laugh by telling silly jokes. They watched old movies together, sometimes laughing at the bad acting, sometimes just sitting quietly, but together. It was in those moments that Paul began to feel a spark of life return. One evening, after a long day, they sat by the window together, watching the sun set behind the hills. The sky was painted with shades of orange and purple. Pamela sat next to him, her hand resting on his. The peaceful silence felt comfortable, like a new beginning. Paul turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. "Pamela," he said, "I can't hide it anymore. I love you." Pamela's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected those words, not like this. Her cheeks flushed, and she looked down for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Paul," she finally said, her voice soft but clear, "I love you too. I never saw you as a crippled man. I saw you as a kind, wonderful soul. Your heart. It's what drew me to you, not your condition." Paul smiled, a deep, genuine smile. It felt like the first time he had smiled in a long time. "Please," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Don't call me sir anymore. Call me Paul." "Okay, Paul," she laughed, her heart light. The way she said his name, with such affection, made his heart swell with warmth. 2 months later, Paul and Pamela stood in front of a small group of friends and family. Their wedding wasn't grand, but it was filled with pure joy, love, and sincerity. There was no need for anything else. They had everything they needed in that moment, each other. The ceremony was simple, yet beautiful. As Pamela stood at the altar, her heart racing, she couldn't stop smiling. She had never been this happy in her life. The guests smiled too, their eyes filled with admiration for the couple. But as Pamela waited for Paul to approach her, something caught her off guard. The doors opened. She expected to see Paul in his wheelchair, like he always had been. But when the man she loved stepped into the room, something was different. He wasn't in his wheelchair. He was walking. Pamela's eyes widened. She blinked, unsure if she was imagining it. Paul was walking, without any help. Slowly, he made his way to her, his step steady, his smile warm and full of love. She couldn't speak. She was stunned. How are you walking?" Pamela whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Paul smiled, his eyes shining with love. "Love healed me," he said, his voice full of tenderness. As he reached her, he took her hands in his. "This is our new beginning, Pamela," he said. "This is the life I want to share with you." The guests gasped, but to Paul and Pamela, none of that mattered. They had each other, and that was all they needed. After their wedding, Paul and Pamela built a home filled with love and happiness. Their life together was simple, but it was full of joy. Pamela discovered she was pregnant, and their happiness only grew as the days passed. One evening, as the sun began to set, there was a knock at the door. Pamela looked at Paul, confused. Who could it be at this hour? She opened the door and froze. Standing there was Lucy, holding a large bag, her face full of desperation. "Let me in," Lucy said, her voice filled with urgency. Pamela stood still for a moment, unsure of what to do. Before she could speak, Paul stepped forward and stood beside her. When Lucy saw him, her face twisted in shock. She stepped back, her eyes wide. How are you walking?" she asked, her voice trembling. Paul chuckled lightly, a smirk forming on his lips. "Can we help you, Lucy? What brings you here?" Lucy quickly masked her surprise with a smile, trying to act as though nothing was wrong. "I know you missed me, Paul," she said, stepping closer. "Let me come in, honey." Paul's laugh was louder now, more mocking. "Honey," he said, shaking his head. "You're calling a wheelchair-bound man honey now. Is that it, Lucy? What are you really here for?" Lucy's smile faltered, confusion and fear creeping into her eyes. "What do you mean? What's happened to you? Why are you acting like this?" Paul's expression darkened. "You've got a lot of nerve, Lucy," he said, his voice cold. "It was all a test. The accident, the wheelchair, everything. I wanted to see if you loved me for me, or if you only cared about my money." Lucy stepped back, her face draining of color. What do you mean?" she stammered. "I wanted to know if you truly cared about me, or if you were just in it for what you could take from me." Paul continued, his voice firm. "And guess what, Lucy? You failed." Lucy's eyes widened in shock and shame. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her lips trembled, and she looked down, unable to meet his gaze. Paul took a deep breath and stood tall. "By the way," he said, his voice steady, "Pamela, my beautiful wife, is already 3 months pregnant with my child." Lucy's face went pale. The tears welled up in her eyes, and she dropped her bag to the floor. "Please, Paul, forgive me," she cried, her voice desperate. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. My old boyfriend used me and left me. I have nowhere to go." Paul's voice was calm but unwavering. "I've already forgiven you, Lucy. But that doesn't mean you have a place in my life anymore. Goodbye." He took a step forward and gently closed the door, but not before his gaze locked with Lucy's one last time. The door clicked shut, sealing her out of their lives for good. Lucy stood on the other side of the door, her body trembling. She could hear the soft sound of her own sobs in the cold night air. Tears ran down her cheeks, but no one was there to comfort her. She had lost everything: the man she thought she could control, the life she had taken for granted. As she walked away, her footsteps slow and heavy, her mind raced with regret. She thought she could use Paul. She thought she could take advantage of his kindness. But in the end, she was the one left with nothing. Inside, Paul and Pamela held each other, grateful for the love they had found in one another. The test had been harsh, but it had shown them both the truth. And now, nothing would break their bond. They were stronger than ever, and together, they would face whatever the future held. Pamela smiled up at Paul, her hand resting on her growing belly. "We made it through the hardest part, didn't we?" she said softly. Paul kissed her forehead. "Yes," he said with certainty. "And we're just getting started."